Scientists can now track animals using only air. Wherever an animal goes, it leaves behind little pieces of its DNA, sloughs off skin cells, hair follicles, bits of saliva, and droppings of feces settle into the ground or float around in bodies of water, giving a clue to researchers that a specific animal had been there long after it leaves. Now, scientists have found that such DNA is also floating around in the air enough for them to detect those tiny traces of wafting genetic material and use them to identify which animals live in an area. Zoos have the added bonus of having confined pens and enclosures the animals stay within. If tiger DNA were detected somewhere other than the tiger enclosure, that shows how far it traveled through the air. Researchers confirm that environmental DNA could travel at least a few hundred meters. Though this work is early, it has promising implications for monitoring biodiversity in the wild. Researchers have already been using environmental DNA found in water to monitor aquatic species. Now, with DNA taken from the air, it opens up the possibility of collecting information on terrestrial animals that might be hard to monitor with other methods, like cameras. This method could potentially be used as an early warning system for invasive species, before that animal is so abundant that it's physically seen in an area. It could also be used to detect endangered species that are rarely seen, or where it would be unethical for a researcher to capture such an animal to collect its DNA or monitor it directly. Before that happens, though, more work needs to be done to learn how factors like wind, solar radiation, temperature, and weather affect the distribution or accumulation of environmental DNA in the air. There might also need to be some getting used to this idea that all this DNA is in the air around us. In earlier studies, Clare and her team collected DNA from the air around a mole rat enclosure in a lab. In those experiments, dog DNA appeared in the samples, and the researchers couldn't work out where it was coming from until they realized one of the people who takes care of the mole rats also takes care of his mother's dog, and he must have tracked that DNA in. It's quite strange to think that we basically exist in this soup of material, Clare says, and some of that material is DNA from all the other animals and people and things that are around us.